Hi, I'm Dave from Hectors Smokehouse, and today what I'm going to do is prepare one of my favourite cuts of meat, which is an inside skirt. An inside skirt is obviously off beef, off cattle, and it's a very unusual cut. It actually is known as the transversus abdomini muscle, which is actually slightly below, going through the ribs and below the ribs and into the cavity around this area here. It's a long muscle that sits on I think it's around the diaphragm. It's around about a metre long when you get it, very thin. It's got a very coarse structure in there, but when you trim it up and turn it into steaks, it is absolutely fantastic. It's a very cheap cut of meat, but when you do it hot and fast, it is just beautiful. As long as you cut against the grain, it's one of those pieces of meat that I think a lot of people don't know anything about, but it is one of my favourites. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through preparing the cut of the inside skirt. So I'll take the full length, take the fat off, trim it into portions, and show you how I actually do that. In other videos, I'll show you a marinade that I use for it, and also you'll be able to look at the chimichurri sauce that I actually use on this as well. So I hope you like the video. If you do, please subscribe to the channel and please click like. Thank you. So this is a piece of inside skirt. This skirt comes from a company in Australia. It's actually Wagyu, and it comes from Share Wagyu, which is in Victoria in Australia. As I say, very underrated cut of meat. You don't see this a lot. I didn't know about it until a few years ago, but it's absolutely beautiful. There's not a lot of gristle. Once you've trimmed the fat off, it's very easy to cook, hot and fast. You can see from when you look at it, looks like it's quite thick, but it's actually not. When I open this up, what you'll see is that it's one piece around about 3 meters long from the diaphragm, as I said earlier, in the cow. There's an inside and an outside skirt. This is the inside skirt, and not to be confused with the flank steak. So it's very different. So the idea is to trim the fat off, trim it into pieces around about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and then it's going to be cooked hot and fast. The important part when you do this though is to make sure you can see the striations going across. You need to make sure you're cutting against the grain when you cut this and do it against the grain. This is fantastic just by itself with some chimichurri. It goes really well with a beef salad, like a Thai beef salad. It's absolutely fantastic in that, but also with fajitas. So it goes really well with fajitas, and you just cut it nice and thin, and it's a beautiful cut of meat. So it's one of my favorite cuts of steak, and it's one of the cheapest cuts of meat to get as well. So I can highly recommend this. So what I'll do is I'll open this up and show you what it looks like out of the bag. So this is it actually out of the bag now, and you can see it's got lovely fat on there. And then if I open this up, there you go. So you can see the full length of that, round about 1 meter long. So it's quite a big piece of meat, but it's not that thick. So if you look at the thickness there and along there, you can see it's not too thick a piece of meat. But what we've got to do is trim quite a bit of this fat off and trim it down into portions that you want to serve, and trim some of the fat. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll show you that process, and I'll try and speed some of it up for you. So you can see some of this will peel off if you want it to, but a good sharp knife, and then you've just got to try and cut into some of this fat and take the fat away. Okay, so obviously I'm just an average Joe, I'm not a butcher or anything, so this will take me a little bit of a while to actually get through. But you can see the sort of pieces and what it looks like when it's cooked. Quite happy to leave some of these fat lines in, because once you actually cook, and if you hit this really hot and fast, and you're talking about 1.5 minutes each side, somewhere around there to get medium rare. But if you cook that hot and fast, you can get some really nice crisp bits in here where you get that Maillard reaction, and it starts to go a bit crispy and you get nice flavouring from that marbling. So this will take me a little while to do, but I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so I'm on to the last piece now. It's taken me maybe 10 minutes to trim this down. I'm lucky I get this straight from the processing plant, so I know exactly when it's been processed, so I know how long I've got on it date-wise and everything else. A lot of people might only be able to get this straight from the butcher after it's been trimmed. Yeah, it'd be nice if this was all trimmed for me, but I don't mind it. It takes me probably 10 or 15 minutes to get through a skirt. And yeah, as I say, I'm not the best. I'm certainly not a butcher by any stretch of the imagination. I don't mind messing around and sat down cutting meat, but yeah, it's not the most important thing in the world for me. But as you can see, 10 or 15 minutes, and at least you've trimmed it the way you want it, into the sizes you want. And yeah, you know exactly what it's going to look like. So really that's about it. It's not too difficult to trim. It takes a bit of time. As you can see from this pile, there's been quite a bit of fat that's come off the surface, but there's still quite a bit that's actually still left in it as well. And that just helps with the flavouring. I've used this a lot. One of my favourite rubs is, there's a rub in the US called Tatonka Dust by Owen's Barbecue, and it's a charcoal rub. And this goes fantastic with that charcoal rub if you put it on quite liberally, and cook this hot and fast, and then slice it really thin against the grain, as I say, following that grain, and then just put a squeeze of lime juice on. Absolutely beautiful. So it is one of my favourite cuts of meat. So that's them all done now. I'll show you. There you go. So that's what they look like. So I've got quite a few pieces out of there. So I'm going to cryovac portions of that so I can just eat it during the week. And then what I will do with some of it, will marinade as well and leave it in a marinade for a few hours. But in another recipe, I'll show you the marinade recipe as well. So I hope you've actually enjoyed that, and you can understand how it goes from being that full 1 metre piece and 3 feet piece down into portions. So hopefully you found that useful. If you did, please click the like button and please subscribe to the channel.